My name is Willow Bennett. I'm 34 years old. 2 months ago, I woke up in a hospital bed and discovered that my newborn daughter was being looked after by a stranger because my own mother had chosen a night at a casino over meeting her granddaughter. For 9 years, I secretly sent my parents $4,200 every month. That adds up to more than $450,000. Not once, not a single time, did anyone thank me. Then came the night everything finally broke. I was lying in the emergency room with a punctured lung and 3 fractured ribs. My baby girl had been rushed to the NICU, and while she lay there fighting to breathe, my mother told my husband something that still echoes in my head. Willow always has these emergencies. Your sister never causes this kind of trouble. 3 hours after I canceled every single transfer I had been sending for nearly a decade, my grandfather walked into my hospital room. Arthur Whitaker. He carried a thick folder in his hands, and what he told me next changed the course of my life. I'm always curious to see how far these stories travel. Your support really motivates me to keep sharing stories like this. Now let me take you back 9 years, to the day this entire story truly began. I was 25, fresh out of college. My first real paycheck had just landed in my account, and I remember staring at the number like it was something unreal, something fragile, almost magical. Then my phone rang. Willow. My mother's voice cracked. She was crying. It's your father. He had a small stroke. My heart dropped into my stomach. What? Is he okay? He's stable, she said quickly, still sounding shaken. But honey, we don't have good insurance. The hospital bills are already piling up and we're behind on the mortgage. They're talking about foreclosure. I tightened my grip on the phone. How much do you need? I hate asking you this, she said softly. You just started your career. But you're the only one who can help this family. We settled on $2,000 a month. I set up the automatic transfer that same night. Right before hanging up, my mother added one more thing. Don't tell your father, he'd be so ashamed. Let's keep this between us. I agreed immediately. Of course I did. What kind of daughter wouldn't help her parents? She didn't thank me that night. She never thanked me at all. Instead, she simply said, "This is what daughters do." 3 days later, I was scrolling through social media when I saw a new post from my sister, Olivia Bennett. She was smiling at the camera, holding up a Louis Vuitton handbag. The caption read, "Best mom ever." She knew I needed retail therapy after my breakup. I stared at that photo for a long time. I almost called my mother to ask about it. Almost. But then I told myself something else instead. Maybe the bag was on sale. Maybe Olivia was really hurting. Maybe I was being selfish for even questioning it. That was the first lie I told myself. It wouldn't be the last. By year 3, the transfers had grown to $3,500 a month. Olivia wants to take an online marketing course, my mother explained. She's finally found her passion. She wants to become an influencer. By year 5, the number had climbed again, $4,200 every month. The house needs repairs, Mom said, and your father's health isn't improving. His medications are incredibly expensive. I never questioned any of it. I just rearranged my life around the payments. I canceled my gym membership, stopped eating out, picked up freelance data consulting work on weekends just to keep my finances balanced. By then, Ethan Carter and I had been dating for 2 years. He noticed. "Willow," he said one evening, "when are we going to talk about buying a place together?" "Soon," I told him. "I just need to save a little longer." He didn't push. But one Thanksgiving, after we had visited my parents, he asked me something that stayed with me. "Have you ever noticed," he said carefully, "that your mom never asks how you're doing?" I laughed it off. "She's just busy." "She spent 40 minutes talking about Olivia's social media followers," he said quietly, "but she didn't mention your promotion once." I didn't have an answer. What I did have was a memory. 4 years earlier, my grandfather had called me out of the blue. Arthur Whitaker. Mom always said he was too busy for family, that he didn't really care about staying in touch. But that day his voice was calm, careful. "Willow," he said, "I need to ask you something." "Yes?" Are you happy? And is your mother treating you well? The question made something in my chest tighten, but I answered automatically. Yes, Grandpa. Everything's fine. He was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, if that ever changes, you call me. Promise. I promised. Then I hung up and eventually forgot about the conversation. I shouldn't have. Everything started to change when I got pregnant. I was 33 when I saw the 2 pink lines on the test. Ethan cried. I cried. For the first time in years, something inside me shifted. And I started doing the math I had avoided for almost a decade. $4,200 a month, times 12 months, times 9 years. $453,600. I could have bought a house, started a college fund, taken real vacations instead of quick weekend trips. But I pushed the thought away. The only thing that mattered now was the baby, so I called my mother. I have wonderful news, I said. What is it? I'm pregnant. Oh, Willow, finally, she said. I was starting to wonder if you were ever going to give me grandchildren. I ignored the sting in that comment. There was something harder I needed to say. Mom, I wanted to talk about the monthly transfers. With the baby coming, Ethan and I need to save more. I was thinking maybe I could reduce the amount to $3,000 for a while. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then her voice came back, sharp and cold. After everything we've sacrificed for you. Willow, do you even know what medications your father takes? Do you have any idea how expensive they are? I tried to explain. I just thought, but she cut me off. That's what you're thinking about? She finished sharply. In the end, I didn't lower the amount. Just before I hung up, I heard my father's voice faintly in the background. Quiet, worn down. Charlotte, maybe we should let her. Then my mother snapped back immediately. William, stay out of this. The call ended. At the time, it felt like such a small moment. Something easy to forget. But looking back now, I think that was the first crack. The first sign that my father was beginning to see what was really happening. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight I started scrolling through my mother's Facebook page, and there she was, just 3 days earlier, sitting at a spa with her friends. Cucumber slices over her eyes, a fluffy white robe, champagne glasses on the table beside them. The caption read, Self-Care Sunday with my girls. The same week she had told me my father's prescriptions were draining every last dollar they had. I stared at that picture until my eyes burned. Ethan found me crying at 2 a.m. What's wrong? He asked softly. Nothing, I said quickly. Just hormones. Another lie. They were becoming easier to tell. 7 months pregnant, exhausted all the time, and still sending the money. One evening, Ethan sat me down at the kitchen table. His laptop was open in front of him. Willow, he said gently, I need you to look at something. He had built a spreadsheet. Every transfer, every explanation your mother had given, every time I had said just one more month and then kept going. Willow, he said quietly, this is $453,600. Seeing the number written out like that made my chest tighten. That's 2 down payments on houses, he continued. That's Lily's entire college fund. That's 20 years of retirement savings. I tried to defend it. They needed, did they? He turned the laptop toward me. Your mom posted photos of a brand new living room set last month. Olivia just got back from a Bahamas cruise. And somehow your dad's medication costs more than chemotherapy. I had nothing to say. I'm not telling you what to do, Ethan said after a moment. But I need you to think about something. He paused before continuing. If you keep doing this, what lesson does our daughter learn? I swallowed hard. That her mother is an ATM, he said quietly. That family means giving until there's nothing left of you? I wanted to argue. I wanted to say he didn't understand. But he did understand. That was the problem. What if I stop? I whispered. And they hate me? Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. Then you'll know, he said softly. You'll finally know what you're worth to them. I wasn't ready to find out. Not yet. But life has a way of forcing answers on you when you're avoiding them. 2 months later, I was lying in a hospital bed with a collapsed lung, my baby in the NICU, and my mother's voice echoing through my husband's phone. Willow always has these emergencies. Some lessons arrive the hard way. October 17th, Thursday, 9:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had just checked my phone. Ethan had texted me, "Drive safe, love you." I was 36 weeks pregnant, exhausted after a late meeting. Rain was pouring down in sheets, the kind that turns headlights into blurry streaks. I was only 3 miles from home, approaching the intersection of Pine Street and 8th Avenue. The light was green. I remember that clearly. Green means go. Green means safe. The pickup truck ran the red light. I never even saw it coming. 1 second I was thinking about a hot bath and finally getting some sleep. The next, metal screaming, glass shattering, the world spinning out of control. The impact tore through my body, through my chest, through the place where my daughter was supposed to be safe. The airbag exploded in front of me. Something cracked. Then several things cracked. I couldn't breathe. Every inhale felt like fire ripping through my ribs. Through the broken window, I heard sirens in the distance, faint at first, then getting closer. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. Still there, still round. But was she moving? I couldn't tell. Everything hurt too much. Ma'am, can you hear me? Flashlights, voices, someone cutting through my seatbelt. She's pregnant, someone shouted. We need to move now. I tried to speak. I tried to say save her first, but no sound came out. The last thing I saw before everything went black was a young paramedic's face leaning over me, his expression tense and frightened. The last thought that crossed my mind was simple. Please, not her. Take me if you have to, but not her. Then everything went dark. I wouldn't wake up for 14 hours. And when I finally did, I would learn exactly what my family was made of. Ethan was in Seattle when his phone rang. He told me later how it happened. He was sitting in his hotel room reviewing code for a presentation the next morning when his phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Harborview Medical Center. Mr. Carter, this is Dr. Samuel Park. Your wife has been in a serious accident. After that, everything blurred together. He barely remembers packing, barely remembers racing to the airport, begging for the earliest possible flight. The soonest departure was 6 hours away. Is she alive? He kept asking. Is the baby alive? Your wife is in surgery, the doctor said. Emergency C-section. We had to deliver the baby early. Your daughter is now in the NICU. Then came the rest. Willow has a punctured lung, 3 broken ribs, and internal bleeding. She's critical but stable. Ethan stood in the middle of SeaTac Airport and felt the world fall out from under him. 6 hours. He couldn't get there for 6 hours. His wife was unconscious in surgery. His newborn daughter was alone in the NICU, and he was 2,000 miles away. So he did the only thing he could think of. He called my mother. Her house was only 20 minutes from the hospital. 20 minutes. She could have been there before the surgery ended. She could have held Lily. She could have been there when I woke up. The phone rang 4 times. Then she answered. Hello? Her voice sounded relaxed, cheerful. Charlotte, it's Ethan, he said quickly. Willow's been in an accident. She's in surgery. The baby... Oh my God, she gasped. Genuine shock. Is she okay? I don't know, Ethan said. I need you to go to the hospital, please. I can't get there for 6 hours. There was a pause, a long one. Tonight? And that was the moment everything changed. Yes, tonight, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Now. Your granddaughter is alone in the NICU. Another pause, and then Ethan heard something in the background. Electronic bells, bright chiming sounds, the unmistakable music of slot machines. Ethan, my mother said slowly, you know Olivia is on her Bahamas cruise this week. What does that have to do with anything? I promised I'd watch her cat, she said. Whiskers gets anxious when he's alone. Ethan actually laughed. He laughed because the alternative, that she was serious, was too unbelievable. Charlotte, he said, your daughter is in the ICU. Your granddaughter was just born prematurely. I'm asking you to drive 20 minutes. Her voice turned cold. Willow always has these emergencies. Your sister never causes this kind of chaos. Olivia is organized, responsible. Maybe if Willow didn't work so late all the time, she was driving home from work, Ethan said. A truck ran a red light. Well, my mother replied, sounding irritated now. I'm sure it's not as serious as it sounds. Hospitals always exaggerate. The slot machines chimed again, louder this time. She wasn't even trying to hide it. You're at a casino, Ethan said flatly. I'm having a night out with friends, she said. Is that a crime? Your daughter almost died. And she didn't, did she? She replied dismissively. She'll be fine. She's always fine. Then she sighed, as if the conversation itself was an inconvenience. Besides, Ethan, you married her. That makes this your responsibility, not mine. Then she hung up. Ethan stared at his phone for a long moment, the silence pressing in around him. Then he did something he had never done before. Slowly, he scrolled through his contacts until he found a number he had saved months earlier, just in case. It was a number I had mentioned once, years ago. Arthur Whitaker, my grandfather. Ethan pressed call. At 78, my grandfather answered on the second ring. I woke up to harsh fluorescent lights and a tube down my throat. Everything hurt. My chest, my arm, my head. Even my thoughts felt bruised. A nurse leaned over me. Mrs. Carter, you're in the ICU. You've just come out of surgery. Try not to move. I couldn't speak with the tube in my throat, but my hand shot instantly to my stomach. Flat. Empty. Panic exploded through me, white-hot and blinding. The nurse understood immediately. Your daughter is alive, she said gently. She's in the NICU. She's small, but she's strong. I started crying. I couldn't stop. About an hour later, they removed the breathing tube. When I finally tried to speak, my voice sounded raw and dry, like sandpaper. Where's my husband? He's on a flight, the nurse said. He should land in about 2 hours. My mother? The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. No family has arrived yet, ma'am. No one. My daughter had just been born, and not a single person from my family had come. I asked for my phone. They had recovered it from the wreckage. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. No missed calls from my mother, no messages, nothing. But there was one notification. A social media post from Olivia, time-stamped 3 hours earlier. It was a selfie on the deck of a cruise ship. She was holding a bright cocktail, ocean stretching behind her. The caption read, "Living my best life, Bahamas vibes only." I stared at it for a moment, then set the phone face down on the blanket. I need to hire a night nurse, I told the attending physician. Someone who can stay with my daughter in the NICU until my husband arrives. They contacted an agency. 40 minutes later, a woman stepped into my room. Mrs. Carter? I'm Rebecca Lawson. I'll be taking care of Lily tonight. She looked to be in her mid-40s. Kind eyes, steady hands, the kind of calm presence you immediately trust. Then she glanced down at my chart. Wait, she said quietly. Bennett? Willow Bennett? Yes. She studied my face for a moment. He spoke about you with regret, she said softly. My heart skipped. Who? Arthur Whitaker. I blinked. He said one of his biggest regrets was not speaking up sooner, she continued. I never understood what he meant. She hesitated, watching me carefully. Would you like me to call him? I still have his number. I shook my head slowly. Not yet, I whispered. I need a little time to process everything. She nodded in understanding. But before she left the room, she scribbled something on a small notepad and set it beside my bed. Just in case you change your mind. I didn't know then that someone else had already made the call. My heart was still racing from what she had said. He talked about me? I asked quietly. Rebecca nodded. He said you were brilliant, that you worked too hard, that he worried about you. She paused. And he said his biggest regret was not speaking up sooner. I didn't understand what that meant either. Not yet. After she left to check on Lily, I lay alone in the dim hospital room. My right arm was wrapped in a cast. Every breath sent sharp pain through my ribs, but my mind felt clearer than it had in years. With my left hand, I reached for my phone again. I opened my banking app. The transaction history loaded. 9 years of transfers, automatic, reliable, like clockwork. $4,200 every single month. I scrolled back through the years, again and again. There wasn't a single message attached to any of those payments. Not one text that said thank you. Not one acknowledgement. Just money disappearing into a void that was never satisfied. My finger hovered over the settings. Manage automatic transfers. My mother's voice echoed in my head. This is what daughters do. But another thought pushed through it. What do mothers do? What do mothers do when their daughters are bleeding in emergency rooms? They show up. Unless they don't. I tapped the screen. Cancel transfer. Are you sure? Yes. Another tap. Cancel transfer. Are you sure? Yes. 9 years. $453,600. 3 taps. That was all it took to end it. I set the phone down. For the first time in almost a decade, something inside my chest loosened, and it had nothing to do with my broken ribs. I should have done this years ago. 3 hours later, the door to my hospital room opened, and there he was, my grandfather, Arthur Whitaker. He looked exactly the way I remembered him, tall even at 78, silver hair neatly trimmed, eyes sharp and observant, the eyes of a man who had spent 40 years studying people from behind a judge's bench. Willow. His voice broke when he said my name. My girl. I came as fast as I could. I burst into tears. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides and took my hand, the one that wasn't in a cast. His grip was warm and steady. I'm here now, he said quietly. I'm here. For a moment, I couldn't speak. It had been 4 years since I'd last seen him. Every time I asked about visiting, my mother had an excuse. Grandpa's traveling. Grandpa's busy with his foundation. Grandpa doesn't really do family visits anymore. My throat tightened. Mom said you didn't want to see me. His jaw hardened. She told me the same thing about you. We stared at each other. Years of manipulation suddenly came into focus. Ethan called me tonight, my grandfather said. He told me everything. What happened, what your mother said. Shame flooded through me. Grandpa, He squeezed my hand. You don't apologize, he said firmly. You have nothing to apologize for. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a thick manila folder, worn around the edges. Willow, he said quietly, there's something I need to tell you. My stomach tightened. I've known for a while about the money. What? The transfers, he said. Every month. For 9 years. He opened the folder. Inside were printed records of every transfer I had made over the years. Your father shared the account records with me, he said quietly. I've been keeping an eye on things, he said with a faint, tired smile. Old habits from my days on the bench. Every transaction was printed and organized. Every single one. Why didn't you say anything? I whispered. He was silent for a long time before answering. When your grandmother was alive, he finally said, I saw problems in this family and stayed quiet. I kept hoping things would fix themselves. His voice carried decades of regret. She died before I could make things right. He met my eyes. I thought if I gave Charlotte enough rope, she might choose to do better on her own. That eventually a mother's love would win out. His jaw tightened. Instead, she used that rope to tie you down for 9 years. He pulled a chair closer to my bed and sat down. The folder lay open between us like evidence in a courtroom. $453,600, he said quietly. That's what you've given them. I nodded. Speaking felt impossible. Do you know what your mother tells people at family gatherings? I shook my head. That you're too busy for family, that you're selfish, that you never help anyone. His voice hardened. She stood in my living room last Christmas and told everyone you refused to contribute to your father's medical bills. My mouth fell open. That's not true. I've been paying for everything. I know, he said gently. That's why I started digging. He pulled another document from the folder, an email chain neatly printed. 3 years ago, he said, your mother asked me to change my will. My stomach dropped. To what? To leave everything to Olivia. What? She told me you already had a successful career and a well-off husband, so you didn't need the money. He gave a bitter laugh. Meanwhile, you were working 60 hours a week and sending her enough money to buy a small house. I felt sick. Not metaphorically, physically sick. I didn't change the will, he said. Not then. I wanted to see what she would do next. He leaned forward slightly. But tonight, Willow. Tonight she showed me exactly who she really is. I stared at him. Grandpa, how did you find out so quickly about tonight? My grandfather smiled then. A real smile this time. Someone called me, he said calmly. Someone else who's been paying attention. Just then the hospital room door opened. I turned, expecting a nurse. Instead, my father stepped inside. William Bennett. His eyes were red and swollen, and he looked more worn down than I had ever seen him. I called him, Dad said quietly. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and there she was, my mother, Charlotte Bennett. She stood there in a silk blouse, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. I could smell her perfume from across the room, the expensive one she only wore to special events. Later I learned what had brought her there. Around 2 a.m, my grandfather had called her himself. His voice had been cold as ice. Your daughter nearly died tonight. Your granddaughter is in the NICU, and I know exactly where you were, Charlotte. I know everything. That was when she realized this situation wasn't just about me anymore. This was about the inheritance, about my grandfather knowing the truth, about controlling the damage. She hadn't come to see me. She had come to manage the situation. The moment she stepped into the room and saw my grandfather already standing there, she froze. Dad? What are you doing here? Then she noticed my father. Her expression flickered, confusion first, then something sharper, calculation. The transformation happened instantly. Her face crumpled into a mask of concern as she rushed to my bedside. Willow, my baby, she said breathlessly. I came as soon as I heard. I glanced at the clock beside my bed. 3:47 a.m. The accident had happened at 9:47 p.m., 6 hours. My grandfather's voice cut cleanly through the performance. Charlotte, he said calmly, you arrived at the hospital at 4 a.m. The accident happened 6 hours ago. Where exactly were you? My mother's hand stopped halfway toward mine. Traffic was terrible. I couldn't get away from... You were at Tulalip Resort Casino, my father said quietly. I tracked your phone. Her face drained of color, then it flushed red. Then she smiled. That tight, dangerous smile I knew too well. William, she snapped, how dare you? I was out with friends. Am I not allowed to have friends? While your daughter was in surgery? My grandfather asked coldly. While your granddaughter was in the NICU? While your son-in-law begged you for help? My mother turned to me, desperation creeping into her eyes. Willow, honey, you understand. I didn't realize how serious it was. Ethan exaggerates. He always... Mom! My voice came out steadier than I expected. Stop. She blinked. I heard what you told Ethan, I said quietly. That Willow always has these emergencies. That this was his responsibility. I held her gaze. I know exactly what you said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said the words I never imagined I would. Don't look at me to fix this, Mom. I can't save you this time. Let me pause here for a moment. If you've ever had someone in your life who always had an excuse, someone who was never there when you needed them but expected you to drop everything for them, I see you. I really do. If you've ever had that moment where you finally stopped making excuses for someone you loved, back to that hospital room. The silence inside that ICU room felt suffocating. My mother stood between my grandfather and me, her eyes darting back and forth, searching for someone, anyone, who might take her side. No one did. Finally, my grandfather reached down and picked up the folder. "Charlotte," he said calmly, "there's something I want you to see." He pulled out the stack of bank statements and held them up. "These are every transfer Willow has sent to your account over the last 9 years. Every single one." The color drained from my mother's face. $453,600, my grandfather said evenly. His voice sounded like a judge delivering a verdict. "Your daughter sent you nearly $500,000. She postponed buying a home. She worked weekends until she was exhausted. She sacrificed her financial security for you." That's not... Don't. His voice sharpened instantly. "Don't you dare lie to me." He pulled out another document. "You told me Willow was selfish. You told me she never helped the family. You told our entire extended family that she was too busy for everyone." He placed the paper on the table. "You lied. For years." My father stood in the corner, watching the entire exchange. He looked old, defeated. "And you, William?" my grandfather said, turning toward him. "You knew, didn't you?" My father's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Yes." "And you said nothing." "I was afraid." His eyes lifted to mine. "I'm sorry, Willow. I was a coward." My mother suddenly found her voice again. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "That money it was offered. We needed it." "You needed it?" my grandfather repeated, stepping closer. "You needed spa days. You needed casino nights. You needed to buy Olivia a Louis Vuitton bag while your other daughter skipped meals to pay rent." My mother's mouth opened, closed, opened again. For the first time in my life, she had nothing to say. Then the shock turned into anger. She spun toward my father. "You!" she shouted, pointing a finger at him. "You called him. You told him about the money." Dad flinched, but he didn't back down. "Someone had to." "How could you betray me like this after everything I've done for this family?" My father's voice cracked. "What exactly have you done, Charlotte?" "I held this family together. I managed everything." "You managed to spend our daughter's money while telling everyone she was selfish," he said. His hands were shaking now. "I watched. I stayed quiet. I convinced myself it wasn't that bad." He turned toward me. "But tonight..." His eyes were wet. "Tonight, Charlotte was sitting at the blackjack table when Ethan called. I heard everything. After she hung up, she laughed. The room seemed to tilt slightly. She said," my father continued slowly, "Willow will figure it out. She always does." Hearing the words out loud felt heavier than I expected, even though I already knew. "I couldn't ignore it anymore," Dad said. "So I called your grandfather. I told him everything." My mother stared at him like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. "You're choosing her over me?" My father wiped his eyes. "For the first time in 30 years, I'm choosing what's right." My grandfather rested a hand briefly on his shoulder. Then he turned back to my mother. "Charlotte," he said calmly, "I'm meeting with my attorney tomorrow. I'm changing my will." The color vanished from her face. "Dad, you can't do that. Olivia is 29 years old and has never held a job," he interrupted. "That's not her fault," my mother snapped. "No," he said quietly. "That's yours." Then his voice hardened. "We're done here, Charlotte." My mother's composure shattered. "Dad, please, you don't understand. Willow doesn't need the money. She has Ethan. She has a career. Olivia has nothing." "Olivia has nothing because you never let her have anything," my grandfather replied. You gave her money instead of responsibility, comfort instead of character. He shook his head slowly. That isn't love, Charlotte. That's sabotage. My mother turned toward me, desperation flooding her voice. Willow, talk to him. Tell him we can fix this. We're family. I looked at her, really looked at her. This was the woman who had taught me how to ride a bike, who braided my hair before school, who once told me I could grow up to be anything I wanted. She was also the woman who had spent 9 years taking my money, telling everyone I was selfish, choosing a casino over her injured daughter, and making me feel guilty for simply existing. Both versions of her were real, and accepting that was the hardest part. Mom, I said quietly. My voice sounded calm, far calmer than I expected. I can't help you this time. She stared at me. I've helped you for 9 years, I continued. I'm done. She began to cry. Real tears. Or another performance? At that point, I honestly couldn't tell the difference. Maybe there wasn't one anymore. My grandfather squeezed my hand gently. Willow, he said, his voice softer now. I don't know if you want anything from me. After all these years, after how I failed you by not speaking up sooner. His voice wavered slightly. But I want you to know something. I see you. I've always seen you. I squeezed his hand back. I don't need money, Grandpa. I know. I just needed someone to show up. He smiled then, the first genuine smile I had seen from him in years. You'll have both, he said quietly. I'll make sure of it. Across the room, my mother watched us. Something shifted in her expression. The tears stopped. And in that moment I realized something important. She wasn't sad. She was calculating, already planning her next move. 4 weeks passed. My ribs slowly healed. My lung reinflated. Lily grew stronger every day, reaching milestones the doctor said might take months. Life began to settle into a new rhythm. Quiet mornings with coffee. Lily's tiny sounds filling the house. Ethan working from home so he could stay close to us. And for the first time in years, no money leaving my account. The first month without the transfer felt strange, like a phantom limb. I kept opening my banking app, half expecting to see the withdrawal, but there was nothing. Just peace. My mother called often. Willow, please, we need to talk. Willow, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Willow, you can't shut me out forever. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. Then one afternoon, the voicemail was different. Willow. Her voice sounded thick with tears. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but please, let me meet Lily. Let me be her grandmother. I'll do better, I promise. I listened to that message 3 times. Ethan watched me carefully. You're thinking about it, he said. Am I stupid if I am? I asked quietly. He shook his head. You're not stupid. You're hopeful. He kissed my forehead. That's different. I called her back. One chance, Mom, I said. Lily's 1-month celebration. You can come, but this is it. If you mess this up, my voice hardened. I'm done. I swear, she said quickly. Thank you, Willow. Thank you. We planned a small gathering. About 20 people. My grandfather, my father, a few close friends, some colleagues from work, and my mother. Ethan helped me prepare. Decorations, food, a simple playlist. The night before the party, he asked, Are you sure about this? I looked down at Lily sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. No, I admitted. But I need to know once and for all. He nodded. We both understood. This wasn't really about forgiveness. It was about closure. The party started at 2 o'clock. My grandfather arrived first, carrying a stuffed elephant almost bigger than Lily. My father came alone. I noticed that he and Mom had driven separately, but I didn't comment on it. Friends arrived, colleagues followed. The house slowly filled with warm voices and laughter. Lily slept through most of it, completely unaware that she was the center of the celebration. My mother arrived at 2:45, 45 minutes late, and she wasn't alone. She walked in with Olivia. I hadn't invited Olivia. Surprise, Mom said brightly. Olivia flew back early from her trip just to meet her niece. Olivia gave me her usual social media smile. Hey sis, congrats on the baby. I forced a polite smile. Thanks for coming. Ethan's hand slipped into mine, a quiet warning and reassurance. My mother moved through the room greeting people, admiring the decorations, playing the role of proud grandmother perfectly. To anyone watching, she looked flawless. But I watched her eyes. Every few minutes she glanced toward my grandfather, tracking where he stood, watching who he spoke with. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Your mother's planning something, Ethan murmured. I know, I replied. About 30 minutes into the party, I stepped into the kitchen to grab more napkins. Olivia was there, standing by the counter, talking on her phone. She didn't notice me. Mom, you need to talk to him soon, she whispered. The kitchen carried sound surprisingly well. I can't keep living like this. I need that money. I froze, then I heard my mother's voice through the speaker. I know, honey. I'm working on it. Just give me an opening. You promised you'd handle it. And I will, she said. Trust me. I stepped quietly back out of the kitchen. So that was it. The apology, the tears, the promise to change. It had all been an act. All of it was about the inheritance. I should have known. Deep down, I did know. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. When I returned to the living room, Ethan looked at my face and immediately understood. What happened? Just watch, I said quietly. My mother had cornered my grandfather near the window. She was speaking softly, one hand resting gently on his arm, the same pleading gesture she had perfected over decades. But earlier, someone had set up a karaoke system for the party. A wireless microphone sat on a side table. The speakers were already on. My mother hadn't noticed. Dad, I know things have been tense lately, she said softly. Her voice carried across the entire room, clear and amplified. But you have to understand, Olivia needs the inheritance more than Willow does. Willow has a husband and a career. Olivia has nothing. The room went silent. 20 people slowly turned toward the window. My mother kept talking. I'm not saying you should cut Willow out completely. Just reconsider the split. It's only fair. Someone coughed. The sound broke the moment. My mother turned and saw everyone staring at her. She saw the microphone, the red light glowing. The color drained from her face. That's not... She looked around desperately. You're taking this out of context. What context would make that better, Charlotte? Natalie Brooks, one of my colleagues, stepped forward. Did I hear that correctly? She asked sharply. You're negotiating inheritance money at your granddaughter's party? You don't understand our family, my mother snapped. Oh, I understand plenty, Natalie replied, her voice like steel. Willow is one of the most generous people I know, and you're standing here playing politics while there's a newborn in the next room. My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. My grandfather stepped away from her slowly, his face unreadable. Everyone in this room, he said calmly, just heard what I've known for years. His voice was steady and final. My daughter sees her children as resources to exploit, not people to love. The room held its breath. I stood up. My legs were steady, my voice clear. Mom. She turned toward me. Tears filled her eyes again. Whether real or not, I had no way of knowing. Willow, please, she said quickly. This is a misunderstanding. I was only trying to... Stop. One word, gentle but firm. She stopped. I walked slowly to the center of the room. Everyone was watching. Friends, colleagues, family. I could feel their attention like a physical weight. I gave you one last chance today, I said. My voice didn't shake. Not because I believed you had changed, but because I needed to know for sure. My mother reached toward me. Willow. For 9 years, I said, I sent you $4,200 every month. Gasps rippled through the room. Do you know what that adds up to? Silence. $453,600. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." While I was sending that money, I continued, you told everyone I was selfish, that I never helped the family, that I was too busy for you. I paused, letting the truth settle over the room. The night I almost died, you were at a casino. Your granddaughter was alone in the NICU. I looked directly at her. You chose slot machines. Now she was crying for real. And today, I said quietly, at my daughter's celebration, you're still thinking about money, about inheritance, about what you can take. I stepped closer. I'm not saying this out of anger, Mom. I'm doing this out of love. My voice softened. For my daughter, for myself, and honestly, even for you. Because someone should have stopped you a long time ago. I took a slow breath. From today forward, we're done. Don't call, don't visit. We're finished. The tears running down her cheeks smeared her mascara. For a moment she looked older, smaller, almost fragile. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. The silence that followed my words was absolute. Then my mother exploded. "You ungrateful child," she shouted, her voice cracking. "After everything I sacrificed for you, I raised you, I fed you. I gave you everything." "You took everything, Mom," I replied calmly. "There's a difference." Olivia stepped forward immediately. "Everyone's overreacting," she snapped. "You don't know the whole story. Mom was just trying to—" "Save it," Natalie cut in sharply, folding her arms. "We all just heard her ask her father to cut Willow out of the will. At a baby's party. What part of that story am I missing?" Olivia's mouth snapped shut. Near the door, Mark, one of Ethan's co-workers, spoke up. "Wait, so she sent them $500,000 and they called her selfish?" "That's what I heard," someone else murmured. Whispers spread through the room. People looked at my mother differently now. Judgment settled over the space like a verdict. My father finally stepped forward. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steady. "Charlotte, we need to go." "William, we can't just—" "Yes, we can," he said quietly, placing a hand on her arm. "We've done enough damage here." For a moment I thought she would scream, or argue, or create a scene. Instead, something inside her seemed to collapse. The performance was over, and no one in the room was buying it anymore. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the door. Olivia followed, shooting me a look filled with pure bitterness. Just before leaving, my mother paused in the doorway. "You'll regret this, Willow," she said coldly. "Someday you'll need me." I met her gaze. "No, Mom. I spent 9 years believing I needed you." I shook my head slightly. Turns out, I was wrong. The door closed behind them. The entire room seemed to exhale. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Freedom. Let me ask you something. If you were in my place, would you have given your mother that final chance? Or would you have cut ties right there in the hospital? There's no single right answer. I'm honestly curious what you think. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to like the video. It helps more people hear stories like this. Now let me tell you what happened after that night. 2 weeks after the party, my grandfather called. "It's done," he said. He had met with his attorney. The new will had been signed, witnessed, and officially filed. The distribution was simple. 70% would go to me, held in trust for Lily. 20% would go to my father, because he had finally found his voice. And the final 10% would go to my mother and Olivia. But there was one condition. My mother would only receive the money if she completed 6 months of therapy with a licensed counselor. "I don't expect her to do it," my grandfather admitted. "But the door is open. That's the best I can offer." I didn't argue. It was more than fair. The consequences came quickly. Without my monthly transfers, my parents' finances tightened almost immediately. The spa visits stopped. The casino nights disappeared. My mother even had to sell the expensive living room set she'd bragged about online. Olivia's influencer career collapsed without financial support. At 29 years old, she ended up taking a job at a department store. Her first real job. My father called me once, alone. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said quietly. "You're right," I replied. "You don't." Silence filled the line. "But thank you," I added after a moment, "for finally speaking up." He began crying. I let him. The extended family eventually heard the truth. News like that travels fast. Aunts and uncles who had believed my mother's stories for years started reaching out with apologies. Some of them I accepted. Some I didn't. And for the first time in nearly a decade, I watched my bank account grow. $50,000 a year. Back in my pocket. Back where it belonged. My mother didn't lose her inheritance because of anything I said. She lost it because of what she did. There's a difference. 3 months later, Lily sleeps peacefully in her crib. My grandfather sits beside her in the rocking chair, reading a novel with his glasses resting low on his nose. Ethan is in the kitchen making coffee. This is my life now. My grandfather visits every Sunday. He talks to Lily constantly, teaching her to recognize his voice long before she'll understand his words. Sometimes he sings her old folk songs from his childhood. Other times he tells her stories about her great-grandmother. "She would have loved you," he says to Lily softly. "She would have spoiled you rotten." Watching them together feels like something inside me is finally healing. The money I once sent away every month has already changed our lives. We paid off the mortgage early, started Lily's college fund, and even took our first real vacation in years. A quiet cabin in the mountains where the only sound was the wind moving through the pine trees. My father still calls sometimes. Our conversations are careful. He's still married to my mother, but something has shifted. He has started setting boundaries, small ones, but real. "It's not much," he told me recently, "but it's a start." That's more than most people manage. Before hanging up, he said something that caught me off guard. "I'm proud of you, Willow. I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until he said them. Healing isn't linear. Some days I still reach for my phone to call my mother. 9 years of habit doesn't disappear overnight. Then I remember something. The mother I wanted to call never really existed. The real one chose a casino over her injured daughter. The real one called me selfish while spending my money. And that version of her, I don't miss at all. 6 months after the party, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. "Willow." It was Olivia. Her voice sounded small, nothing like the confident tone she usually used online. I said nothing, just waited. "I know I probably don't deserve this call," she said quietly. "And you probably hate me, but I needed to tell you something." I still didn't respond. Let her work for it. "I got a job," she continued. "A real one. I've been there 3 months now. It's nothing fancy. Just retail. But I show up. I work." She paused. "And I started therapy." That surprised me. "Dr. Reynolds," she continued. "She's helping me see things. Things about Mom, about me, about how I grew up believing I was special and everyone owed me something." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not asking you for money. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying. For the first time in my life, I'm actually trying." Silence stretched between us. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "Why now?" She took a shaky breath. "My therapist asked me something I couldn't answer," she said. She asked me, "When you're old and looking back on your life, who do you want to be?" Olivia's voice trembled. And I realized I didn't have an answer. She swallowed. "I don't want to become Mom, Willow. I don't want to end up alone wondering why nobody loves me." Her words lingered in the silence. Maybe it was manipulation, maybe another performance, but something in her voice sounded different, broken in a way that's very hard to fake. "I'm not ready to let you back into my life," I said finally. "I know," Olivia replied quietly, "but I hear you, and thank you for saying it." A week later, I sent her a text. 2 words. Good luck. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't a closed door either. 1 year later, my mother never called again. Through my father, I heard that she had moved in with an old friend. The house had been sold. Apparently, there had been more debt than anyone realized. No more casino nights, no more spa days, no more carefully staged performances of motherhood. I didn't feel happy about it, but I didn't feel sad either. I felt free. Olivia and I aren't close. We may never be, but she's still in therapy, still working. On Lily's birthday, she sent a card, handmade, not store-bought. It was a small thing, but it was real. My father comes to dinner about once a month now. He and Ethan talk about football in the living room, while Lily crawls around the floor between them. When he holds her, there's a tenderness in his hands I don't remember seeing when I was a child. Maybe he's trying to make up for lost time, or maybe he's simply tired of being the man he used to be. Either way, I let him try. And my grandfather? He's here every Sunday. He's been teaching Lily how to play chess, even though she still tries to eat the pieces. He's also writing a memoir about his years as a judge. Recently, he asked me to help him edit it. "You're the only one I trust with the truth," he said. I cried when he told me that. The good kind of crying. Last week, I was putting Lily to bed. She wrapped her tiny hand around my finger and looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. And in that moment, I made her a promise. I will never make you feel like you have to earn my love. You are enough. You have always been enough. Because family isn't about blood. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you. Not because they have to, but because they want to. And I finally found mine. It was worth everything I lost to get here. In that quiet moment beside Lily's crib, I realized something that took me almost a decade to understand. Love should never feel like a debt you are constantly trying to repay. For years, I believed being a good daughter meant sacrifice without limits. I believed loyalty meant silence. I believed that if I just gave enough money, enough patience, enough forgiveness, eventually the people I loved would see me. But real love doesn't require you to disappear. It doesn't demand that you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. And it certainly doesn't punish you for protecting your own peace. What I learned through everything that happened is simple, but powerful. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. They show people how you expect to be treated. And more importantly, they show you who is willing to respect that. The people who truly care about you will step closer when you set a boundary. The ones who only benefited from your silence will step away. And that difference tells you everything you need to know. Today, my life is quieter, smaller in some ways, but infinitely more honest. I no longer measure love by how much I give away. I measure it by who chooses to stay, who shows up, and who stands beside me when it matters. That is the kind of family my daughter will grow up knowing. And if there's one thing I hope this story leaves with you tonight, it's this. You deserve a life where your kindness isn't treated like an obligation, and your love isn't taken for granted. If any part of this journey resonated with you, if you've ever struggled to set boundaries, or finally found the courage to stand up for yourself, I would truly love to hear your thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is simply remind someone that they're not alone. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video. It really helps this message reach more people who might need to hear it right now. And if you believe someone in your life could relate to this story, consider sharing it with them. And of course, if you enjoy stories about resilience, truth, and people finding this growing community, thank you for being here, for listening, and for staying until the very end.